Good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to Wednesday. Welcome to the Wednesday Album Club. I'm one of your hosts tonight. My name is Marty. Good to see you. Hope you've all been excellent. And look at this guy. We missed out on a week, and he's all back, ready to rock. How you doing, Kellen?
I'm doing all right. I'm excited. I did get a shout out at the end of the last episode. I caught up, and Jim was like, "I'm going to get to this faster than you can, Kellen." So, happy to get a chance to spin one of the records I picked up while I was in Travers, actually. So,
cool.
Fucker.
Yes, doing well. Let's talk about spinning stuff.
Ben, you're frozen again.
Oh,
sorry.
Me? Am I back?
No, you're fine. Kellen, Ben's frozen. Anyway,
Okay.
Go ahead, Kellen.
Okay. So I don't know what took me so long, but I finally have been trying to go through all of the Radical Research podcast and listen.
What a task.
Anyway, so I've been kind of going for the more recent one that I listened to was on psychedelic music. What is psychedelic music was the question that they asked. And there was a lot of interesting things that were on there, but they brought up, I think it was Jeff who brought up Wagner, what he thought was some parts of psychedelic music you could hear within war metal. It was an interesting piece there. By the way, I don't know, are you tuning in? Like, are you chatting with them live, Marty, when they're doing this? Because they keep on referring to you in the course of the podcast, so I don't know what that's about. But
I when I listen, I give them notes sometimes. I get a whole. I text either Jeff. Well, I text Jeff mainly, and you guys need to disagree more. Stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, anyway, so I pulled out. This is Diocletian, and I'm listening to some war metal as of late and trying to, and maybe a subject for a different video, but listen to psychedelic music within that genre. It was interesting. But besides that, Jim's question spurred this poll, because if you were going on, I guess I don't want to spoil the question, but this is a March of the Parasite by Liathra, 2007 death metal band. The other week, I mentioned this band, and unlike tonight's album, this is a pretty cool album cover. So this is DS13 Killed the Kids, and that's if anyone may recognize, yeah, for sure. So punk from Sweden, some like hardcore thrashcore stuff, but that's a Pusshead album artwork there. And I don't know, I've been in the mood a little bit for some punk. This is a more recent record, some Oi out of the UK, I believe. This is Chubby and the Gang with Speed Kills, if anyone digs that one. But yeah, that's what's been spinning around here.
That was one of those Eric Bauer pulled out a couple of years ago, and I was like, what is going on in hardcore punk with this like Harry Robert Crumb sort of album cover? It was like, I don't know what's going on over there. You know?
Yeah. All right, Ben, you're up. What's been going on, and what have you been listening to?
And why am I out of focus all of a sudden?
I don't know.
I'll try and get these technical difficulties underway. Mostly been listening to this. It got me kind of on a side tangent of if Dawn's Sorg Passparte Fingerflow. There, that's in focus. I think in focus rest of the night. How about that? Mostly that. Also discovering a band called Sacrilege BC and their Party with God full length. Mm-hmm. Super good.
Yeah.
Kind of crossover punk stuff.
Yep.
I'm surprised no one's ever really talked about it much. But
Dennis over at Analog Archive says.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mostly just those two. Handful of hates. What do you call it? Hierarchy 1999. Kind of been on a little black metal kick here and there too. But my listening has mostly been to this awesome album that we're covering tonight.
All right. Jim.
Cool. Well, I got to start this off with celebrating This is my favorite beer in the world. This is an Upper Peninsula beer. I can only get when I come up here to Northern Michigan. It's the Pickaxe Blonde. Feel like a good clear beer. This is the best in the world. I love
It
it.
is good.
It's from Houghton, Michigan. Awesome. So drink this.
Cheers.
Oh, cheers. Okay, cool. Yeah. So I went with Marty to Grand Rapids to our favorite record store this past weekend, and Vertigo Records. Awesome metal section, the best metal section I've ever seen anywhere, honestly. And so I'm going to show a few of the records I've got. Obviously, they're still in the shrink, so I got to take them back to Florida, so I wasn't going to pull them out. But I have been listening to them online, So anyway, Au Noir, The Merciless. I think this is their second album, Marty. I think is it second or third? Anyway,
fourth or third.
Really?
I think it's their third.
I think it's their third. Yeah. Really great. I'm definitely a Black Thrash Attack guy, but I kind of like the clean production on this. The riffs really kind of punch. So, killer album. And this next one's on Marty's recommendation. We're talking Michigan again. It's a Michigan night. This is Lucifer's Hammer. This is the demos, the Burning Church demos. This thing slams, man. It is just brutal Black Death. It is. Yeah, it is heavy. It is menacing. The vocals are just, rip, throat tearing. I can't recommend this enough, man.
I gotta get that.
Check. Yeah, absolutely get this. I'm gonna go back. I want to get all their stuff after this.
It's one of my favorite demos, actually. I love that thing.
Yeah, this thing is amazing, and their stuff's all on Nuclear War now. If you guys are looking for it. This one's been on my list for a while. And Slaughter, Strapato. Man, I just there's obviously a couple guitar player or one guitar player. The way he one guitar sounds like really tinny, but then one sounds just buzzsaw and awesome. And I kind of love the dichotomy of that, and it just makes this just like it. This is pure death thrash. It's just, man, it was hard not to just bang my head sitting at my desk, doing while I was working today. But anyway, this is a classic. Everybody knows what this is, but just great stuff. So. Anyway, I got more that I got, but I'm going to save that for upcoming weeks. And stoked to talk about Infernal Majesty.
You're going to do a collection update video on your new YouTube channel, right?
This is my only YouTube channel.
He says today.
All right.
Anyway, okay. Up for me. Yep. Again, we went downstate. I got a couple things here. One thing here I got down there. We'll start with that. Joined at the Head. This is a 4-song EP, 45 RPM EP on Wax Trax. I got it for $5.99. I won't turn down a Wax Trax release for that cheap. And this is the dudes from Control Bleeding and also Skin Chamber. And I hear this is like a cross between both of those projects. The first side is the first song, Consecrations Will, is all electronic, industrial. Sounds like Controlled Bleeding in a lot of ways. Side 2, In Penetration and Squeal, has got the guitar on it. It sounds a lot like Skin Chamber. So, super clean copy for $6. Excellent stuff on Wax Trax label. These I did not get downstate. I was flipping through YouTube and watched a half-hour set by the Philadelphia band Poison Ruin, and I loved it. I couldn't believe 4 guys from Philadelphia sounded so English. In fact, my buddy Jack was over and listened to it, and he said it sounded like English peace punk, whatever that means. I don't know what that means, but so I picked up this one. I don't know what this is called. I think it's just Poison Ruin. Debut LP, killer blend of punk, post-punk, and dungeon synth. People are saying dungeon synth, and the synth textures in between the tracks, they might hint at it a little bit, but it doesn't come off as full dungeon synth. It's just kind of a cool mix. So, yep, this is their first album, and I also picked up Harvest, their second album. Both of these are great. I also got a 7-inch. I haven't listened to it yet, and it just came the other day. And they've got a new album that's coming soon, so I'm going to have to probably pre-order that. And lastly, I've kind of fallen down a bit of a goth hole, so I've been listening to Sisters of Mercy, First and Last and Always. And, yep, love this stuff, love this era. I don't know. I'm just a sucker for it. I like all the classic bands, and I've been listening to some playlists on Spotify, and there's a lot of... It's kind of funny, out of all the bands in all of the genres in the world, the people that consider themselves goth bands or rip off the classics unashamedly. You know, they're a little more obvious about it than I think a lot of other genres are. But anyway. But yep, that's what I've been listening to, and a bunch of other stuff too. But I only was going to show 4. But we're here tonight to talk about this banger from 1997, None Shall Defy. A little history about the band. Infernal Majesty is a Canadian thrash metal band formed in 1986 and now based in Vancouver. They start out in Toronto. They are best known for their debut album, None Shall Defy, released in 1987. However, the 1998 reissue by Displeased Records inspired them to get back together in 11 years later. And they recorded a new album followed by a European tour. They are still active. They've put out a handful of records since their reunion. And Jim picked it, so we'll start with Kellen. What were your first impressions on this banger?
Okay, so I'll give this in kind of 2 parts. One, it's something that I had heard sparingly, kind of breezed over, like B-tier thrash. That was like the first impression. Then spending more time with it, when I just recently, I'd picked up Onslaught the Force, Sacrifice, Forward Determination, and None Shall Defy. And sitting down and kind of listening them back to back to back, I really thought this was comparatively less of a thrash record. But this past week, I would still like, when you put it side by side with Onslaught and Sacrifice, it is less of a thrash record, yet somehow more of a death metal record.
I think it's a speed metal record.
I'll kind of get
You're
to
both
like,
wrong.
like it's interesting how it kind of avoids this one spot where I want it to land to be a pure thrash record. And so many parts of it remind me of a speed metal record. But this past week, there's some interesting aspects of it that I kind of felt like I was listening to like a proto death record. So we'll get into the songwriting later.
Ding.
But all right, well, I want to know what I won, but apparently Jim won't toss me out of this time that I hate him. But yeah, that was kind of my impression after this past week.
All right. Ben.
Focus is driving me nuts. Well, so this Dawn EP was one of the very first black metal anythings I ever heard. And man, it holds up really well. Really one of my earliest black metal loves. And so if you're not aware, they cover Night of the Living Dead at the end of this EP.
That's the first time I've ever heard this band too, was on that EP. Yeah.
And it works really, really, really well. I thought they didn't really change the song too much. It's a great pick. It's always awesome when a band throws a cover on an EP that they can kind of sandwich in with some songs. I honestly think that's maybe my favorite Dawn material too. But anyways, heard that song and I always just thought, okay, well, Dawn's awesome, so they made this mediocre song a lot better. So it didn't make me check out Infernal Majesty all that much of a hurry anyways. So I can't really recall when I may have ever first heard None Shall Defy originally. One of my earliest memories about the band is I saw Tanner Anderson from Obsequia wearing an Infernal Majesty shirt, and I thought, oh, okay, I should give them a shot. That was probably around then, but I don't have any specific memories as far as like first time listening to it. So again, like I have been with a lot of these, I'm just kind of going in with an empty head. I mean, I actually bought this probably 6 months ago or so, just to really like, okay, it's time I own it. It's time I love it. Every time I listened to it, I did like it. But so like coming at it with a fresh slate as much as I could, it's near perfect of an album. It's got so much character. It's got so many little quirks about it and imperfections and things that I would criticize about it objectively that make it just lovable. I do agree with Kellen that it's kind of a B tier album for a couple of reasons. Not that the material isn't amazing, but like they're a band that didn't go on to do really anything else that anybody cared about. They didn't really tour at all. And the artwork on the front of it is pretty much laughable. So there's a couple of things like holding them back from being up there with your fucking Death Angels, your Overkills, your Slayers, and all that. So that's the only reason that it's like a B tier release, I think. Other than that, it's a fucking awesome album that belongs up there with all your party thrashes, all your thrash playlists, and all that. There's a couple of dud songs on it too that aren't awesome, but I mean, it's just, again, I wouldn't change anything about it. There, I should probably stop before I gush more, but yes.
For me, first impression, I had the first Infernal Majesty song I heard was on that Very Dawn record EP that Ben showed. So, and the fact that their cover isn't that far off the mark from the original is even more of a testament to the song. But to me, I'm going to have to agree with Kellen a bit. There's some proto-death leanings on this, especially in the structure and the songwriting style. But the core of it for me is speed metal. It sounds very speed metal, especially off the first track. Kind of the mission statement, it sizes it up. I think we're going to get into that in a second, so I won't go there. But I think the thing that makes them the most thrash is the singer. He's kind of got a gruff yelling style, but it's dark. And this is an evil record. It just has an evil vibe to it. The riffing on it's dark. The melodies on it are dark. I kind of get that same feeling from like the first two Sacrifice records. So there's some evilness to that. Although the second one, Form Determination, which is my favorite, is a little bit more leaning towards Metallica and stuff like that for the time. But I don't know. There's just a darkness to this and it doesn't really sound Canadian to me. I don't know what that means because the Canadian vibe is kind of nebulous, hard to nail down. I mean, you think instantly of Razor, or you think of Voivod, or all these bands, or even Slaughter, the Slaughter thing that, record that Jim showed. These bands are all there is no unifying sound. So, I mean, I don't know what I mean by saying this doesn't sound Canadian to me, but it sounds European. It sounds like a European.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Pseudo evil speed metal, death metal conglomeration, but it's sick and awesome. I remember this being at the store downtown, New Moon Records. This was in the bins when I bought all that stuff for $1.99. This was $1.99 as well, original pressing of it. I looked at the cover, I looked at the back cover, I'm like, nope, it looks like glam. It looks, what stupid fucking cover. These guys look horrible. Nope, I left it, and now, all these years later, I kick myself. Because
were you able to check out the band photos?
Oh, it was on the back of the record. Yeah. I said maybe I'll check it out and leave it here, and when I come back, it'll be here. Nah, it wasn't that. That wasn't. Every time I said I'm going to leave it here, it'll be here next time. It never worked out for me. But yeah, great record. Really, no one talks about it much, so it's kind of cool. We're dipping into it today. Jim, did you? No, it's your turn.
Yeah. There's reasons why it took me a long time to listen to this record, and similar to what Marty's experience was, but I have a question for that, so we'll get into that in a minute. But when I finally did check it out, because I kept seeing it mentioned by musicians that I respected or in interviews and stuff like that, and then I saw on Metal Archives it was super high rated. I'm like, I finally pulled the trigger and was like, wow, man, I love this. I feel like if first of all, some of my favorite Slayer is really Haunting the Chapel. Those three songs are my three of my favorite Slayer songs. And what this sounds like to me is a more satanic, faster, more technical Haunting the Chapel. If that had been a full-length album with frankly better guitar players, and just even more satanic, this is kind of where that would have went. I hear a little bit of that same sort of mid-rangey guitar tone, like Araya, but dark and serious rather than playful satanic. So it takes that, but then it gets just death. I hear Morbid Angel-isms all over here. All over this record. They're absolutely transact off. Listen to Infernal Majesty, because man, I'm like, oh my god, that sounds like a Morbid Angel riff. 2 years before Altars of Madness. I know we have Abominations of Desolation that was before, but these guys had demos too. So I'm like, and we'll get into which songs I think probably inspiration, for Trey. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, this thing I do feel is absolutely proto death. It's on the heavier side of thrash, but these guys, when they're playing these really unique tremolo lines, they were laying a blueprint for, like, like full on death metal bands that came after in that uber satanic realm. And so, yeah, this one just grabbed me by the ears right away, sucked me in, had all these great sounds that I liked, but like twisted and turned into their own way, because despite, their influences and who they influenced later, this is very much just Infernal Majesty. To Marty's point, this is a Canadian band, but, they don't really, there's no defining sound for Canada, but they just, I don't know what they sound like, what I mean? And that's great. It's I hear the thrash, I hear the proto death. Not so sure I hear the speed metal that Marty's talking about. But yeah, the presentation, the technicality, there's so much going on here, and I love the lyrics. I think they're catchy and they're fun and evil, and there's just the only things that I don't like are the cover is what, man. that was definitely one of the things that kind of kept me away from it. I just didn't get it. I'd seen so much better artwork on the backs of notebooks in my in high school, so I'm not sure what's going on there. I still don't understand what's going on there. I tried to find out a little bit more about the artist, but haven't really been successful. But
I mean, we got a lot of album covers that were like things floating in space and like monsters ripping through
the fabric of space,
something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But what is he? Yeah.
Yeah, what is he? And I think I could have almost done with the goblin face thing if it wasn't for the weird goofy crown on his head.
No, if you take that off, it's still not good. It's still bad. But say what you want about the cover, as bad as it is, it's kind of a thing. It's so bad.
Oh, yeah.
I want to say it's good. It's really not good, but it's a talking point to an album. It's a talking point. I don't know.
Honestly, it's one of the things that it gives them, a little bit more attention because people always talk about it. Speaking of things, visual wise, if that's a word. My question tonight, let's go ahead and get into that, is in the extreme metal world, we like to believe that looks don't matter. That said, typically we'll praise the corpse paint and vilify the poofy haired dudes that nearly sullied metal's reputation in the 1980s. Did Infernal Majesty's look give you pause before you gave them a spin? And, for being honest, does image mean more to us as metal fans than we let on? Take it away, Marty.
Ooh.
Oh yeah. I mean, like I said, it sat in a bin, original pressing a bunch of years ago, and the cover mixed with the, I got a chuckle out of the album, the band photos, but I'm like, meh. It looked glam. It looked like glam dudes trying to be rough and tumble. So I left it sit in the racks. So yeah, and image, I mean, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is Anthrax, right? The jam shorts, look at State of Euphoria band pictures. They're running around in these, jam shorts and goofy shirts. And do we secretly care about image? I think so. I mean, we're visual creatures. Hey, Mike, thanks a bunch. You rule, man. You didn't have to do that. Thank you. I don't know how to go much deeper into this than, as much as I'm tired of like grim painted black metal bands, I guess I kind of like it. It just kind of, even though it's so tired and it's such a tired type of aesthetic, it still kind of works if the music matches the aesthetic. Yeah. And does the music of Infernal Majesty match their look? Back then, I don't think so. I don't know. What do you think, Kellen? I didn't answer that for shit. Sorry, but it's kind of I hadn't thought about it. It's a good question.
Well, like by the time I got to this record, the fact that the album cover looked like it was, you were picking it up because someone you trusted was like, I know the album cover, but trust me. Like that was by the time I got to this record. In terms of the look, for bands. And I think that kind of works both ways, right? Like I want to protect, right? Because at some level, image with metal is about culture as well. And I do feel there's something that I think is earned there that we want to like own up to, is something that we all can share and participate in. And like, that is a way where we can identify and understand one another. So I don't want to like turn away from, how much or diminish how much image matters for metal, for bands, how we understand them. What I will say on top of that, though, is the flip side of that coin. How many bands do we know that look the part, but they make absolute garbage music? Like, and I think that's the one thing I want to keep track of, and why this record and this band have been held in such high regard over the years. It wasn't because of the album cover. It wasn't because of the band photos. It's because the music being played still holds weight. And I think metal fans will honor that first and foremost before image. And I think probably anyone who is sincerely, has affection towards the music that they, listen to and they love, they're always going to honor the art first, and image second.
It's kind of a good point, Jeremy. If image wasn't a big component, then those of us who obsess over physical media wouldn't. Maybe. All right, Ben, your thoughts on the topic?
I'm definitely a creature who looks for visual cues to tell me little secret things that are going to tell me an album is good or bad. And this is one of those albums that proves the point that you got to consider everything, even if it, like, sometimes, especially if it has a stupid album cover. I don't think it's god awful. It's dumb, but like, I could show so many album covers from the 80s that were absolute garbage. I don't think it's that bad, but I definitely respond to a lot of little cues and things like that. I'm a design and layout nerd. I love visual arts. I love paintings. I love fantasy art, stuff like that. So as far as this album goes, I definitely didn't see the band photos probably until I had this in my hand a couple of months ago. It was on the acclaim of the album itself that I listened to it. So the album cover certainly was, it's iconic. It's once you see it, you can't forget it, and you never need to see it again, really. But I think it was intriguing to me, like, knowing that it had this album cover. I was like, that looks like it. If it's awesome, it's going to be like 5% more awesome because it's a shit cover. That's
kind of true.
I have so many albums like that where I'm like, the album's okay, but the cover is why I keep it around,
Well, look at all the covers that, like, Aaron the Metal Theologian and Alan show, like from the New Wave of British Heavy Metal. Some of them are just stupid, and it's kind of in this. It's kind of in this vein. So maybe they're trying to tap into that vibe,
Yeah, it's almost like, but not Butterface, but Butter Album, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, like, and there's so many visual things we look for. Like, we want to act like it's like the visuals that we're sharing with other metalheads are only for us, and we don't want them to be like overt to attract posers or outsiders or something. Those little things, like I'm wearing a Carnage shirt in my band photo, just so you know that this album isn't gonna suck. Those kind of little things are the little secrets that we give each other in pictures and stuff like that. So absolutely, we're totally paying attention to each other's fashion. We're talking about puffy tongue sneakers, 40 years after the fact, as like signifiers for legitimate thrash or party thrash or however you want to see it. But we put so much weight and gravity on these little visual cues and things, whereas when it's not for other people. The big point I want to get across, I think.
Right. Jim.
So yeah, for me, this is years and I used to subscribe to Thrash Metal magazine when I was a thrash kid, and so there was a picture of them and a review of the album, and I remember just this incongruity between what I saw the poofy hair and everything, and then this write-up of this, like, oh yeah, uber satanic thrash band, and the review was great, but the picture was just like, I don't know what to make of this. It just like, confused my teenage brain. You know what I mean? And I was super confused.
For those of you who don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. And especially the guy, that guy right there, the one, and that one, the blonde dude, yeah, woo. I mean, big hair, dude, and
there are 12 inches between his head and his hair.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, don't get too close to that forehead with a lighter, for sure. But yeah, so I even then I was like, do I want to listen to this? Do I want to check? I think I do, but I wanted to check it out because of the review, but I wasn't sure, especially in like the mid to late 80s, like there was that there was this division, the thrash kids, the kids who were into the heavy stuff, and then like the guys that were into the Poison and Bullet Boys or whatever, and so I didn't really know what to think, and then later when I saw the cover, I was still like, well, I still don't get it, like what do I do with this, and so to answer my own question, yeah, it did have an effect on me. It did make me kind of like put off checking this band out. Much to my loss. I think I should have jumped on this train earlier because this band is amazing. And what I should have focused on was like, hey man, they were still dressed in black and wearing spikes. Come on, Yeah. So some of that like heavy metal aesthetic was there, like more extreme metal aesthetic anyway. But I do think that, even though, even especially in a thrash world, and I think continuing on in a death metal and stuff, it's like, yeah, man, just wear t-shirts and jeans, and that's all you need, and that's true, but to a certain extent. But if someone decides to go outside the box and decides to use a little, hairspray or whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean that the album's going to suck. So it was a lesson, I think, for me to kind of push past my own expectations, because this is an absolute banger for me. I love listening to this record, and I feel like I just get more joy out of it every time. And so a lesson for me to to dig a little bit deeper, and if something, and just in general, I find that if something's kind of slightly off-putting to me at first, if I give it a chance, typically I embrace it later on. And so that's where I landed with this record. So.
Well, Tim here is right. Honestly, the band shots are right on par with late 80s King Diamond picks. True? 100%.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
Another band, too, is Lizzie Borden. That early, Kellen just popped it in the, give them the axe.
Yeah. I mean, well, when he was talking, I was like, you know what that looks like to me with the hair, but also like,
Yep.
I mean, that's what it looks like to me. Like,
you got the Timmy Grabber Hansen eye patch,
and I love Lizzie Borden, man, and and you guys know this. I mean, Visual Eyes was one of my first picks on this show. Yeah. So,
Love You to Pieces, Give Them the Axe, Menace to Society, all that shit rules. Great. All right, well, let's get into the musicality and composition of None Shall Defy. Kellen, you want to fire us off?
Sure. So the first thing I would say is the lack. I don't want to say necessarily underperform, but like an underwhelming drum performance on this album for me. And to some level, like I think that here I'm going to stop. I'm trying to re-sleeve this Lizzie Borden record. It's absolutely
never sleeve on camera. Rookie shit. Okay. Rookie bullshit.
I brought it out for show and tell, and we get screwed on that. Okay, here we go.
Save it for later.
But I think what stood out to me the most this past week is there's a lot of space for the guitar and bass to sort of operate and build momentum on this record. Like some of the tracks that you already mentioned for me, Night of the Living Dead here, but even like the beginning to SOS, there's like a slow creeping weight to these songs, and to me, that's one of the things that stands in contrast. Like I agree where you're coming from, Marty, in terms of there's aspects. This starts off and Overlord is a speedy sort of ripper to begin this record, but probably one of the more unique aspects of the songwriting here for me was like, I don't know how this actually operates when you're in a band, but like you get a hold of a riff, and then there's a decision like, how many times do we cycle through this? Like, when is it exhausted its life? And
It's always a
when,
discussion.
right? And so I feel what they did, there's times where they just actually will hold the riff and it sort of grows in weight and personality as they sort of recycle it. And to me, that's like a standout characteristic that I was getting from like early death metal records. And that's where this sort of takes a life that extends beyond speed metal. You know, would I compare this to something like we just did the Holy Terror record not that long ago? That for me, right, even though we talked about there's some trad on that, the speed metal on that is so decidedly like jet fuel. This by comparison feels, you know, more reserved, and the strength of their songwriting is, I think there's for a debut record to show this much patience, to show this much restraint. I think that's a really cool aspect to a very young band writing songs and doing so with enough confidence. Like they must have been at least at some point on to something like, yeah, we know we don't need to change this. We don't need to rush to the next fast part. So that's one of the cool things about this record that really sort of stood out to me. I can understand the vocals here done by Rick Nemes. I don't know how to pronounce the last name there. I can understand that coming from, he's got a bit more of like a thrash delivery for sure. But what I love the most about this band is, I don't know if he's actually credited for the lyrics here, but they know how to like punctuate a stanza. Like he'll end an actual, you know, paragraph of lyrics, and the part on Night of the Living Dead where he finishes the phrase "kill all that lives," and like the gong goes off, like the giant bell, and then it just, man, every single time it's perfection. The fact they seize that moment, and there's a couple of like moments on this record throughout where he knows how to get to the end of the lyrical sort of phrasing and then punctuate it for the band to sort of carry on, and whether they echo it or repeat it or so on and so forth. That's a cool other trait that I found here, is like, I don't think he has the most distinctive voice or the most unique voice in terms of his delivery. The lyrical content is, to Jim's point, like they grabbed a hold of like satanic dark thrash content and threw it all over this record. It's explicitly satanic. That's part of the appeal here. It's just like a dark thrash record in terms of the content. But
like the Force, Onslaught's the Force.
Yeah, but I see the thing though with Onslaught is that I turn that on and the crunch in the guitar tone is so unmistakably thrash to me. Oh yeah. 100%.
There's
I agree with your point, Marty, about the guitar work here. It has a certain kind of, I don't want to say like it's not smooth, but it's almost blurred in a way that I would associate with speed metal more than I would thrash. And that's where I think it almost like jumps a step. It's like a speed metal album sometimes, and then it's like a 1987 proto death record. It like skips, you know, Onslaught, and it skips Sacrifice when I listen to them. So anyway, that'll be my little piece here on songwriting.
Jeremy, I'm glad we could get you on the path of getting yourself an eye patch. Send it when you get one. Send it a picture. We'll share it on the thing.
We're all getting eye patches next week.
I'll make my own.
Screen print your own ones.
Right,
wow, there's a lot of musicality here. I definitely agree with Kellen's point. There's early death parts, there's thrash parts, there's speed parts. There's not a huge amount of like synergy among all that stuff. Some of the changes are a little bit clumsy. They're not like geniuses at switching from one part to another, and I don't need that to be. Like this is not an amazing album. This is not like a 10 out of 10 album. It's like 9.5, but like those are the kind of things that make it a little clumsy, and like I need it to be that because the album cover is inexcusable. Anyways, they definitely are hinting at some death metal stuff Kellen's point was great, and I want to kind of expand on that. There's like moments where they're consciously making a vacuity of embellishment, where it's simplified, it's just slowed down and chuggy, and the tempos that they choose for both the fast parts and the slow parts are impeccable. When they slow it down, that is a part where everybody's got their beer up and they are headbanging as hard as possible. I don't know what it is. They just choose exactly the right tempo, and they're kind of behind the beat when they slow it down. It's just so effective, and they do that so well. I don't think there's many speed metal bands that play slow super well like that. That impressed me a lot. And when they do a thing that I think is really lifted for a lot of death metal bands, they're slowing it down and it's chunky, and then they'll just add a little bit of a flair to it just to make it evil. Like towards the end of, I think it's Skeletons in the Closet, like the last 10 seconds, it's kind of repeating the same thing over and over again. But once they get to the last 10 seconds, they throw in like a couple of little flourishes that are just like, let's get out of here. Let's wrap this up. It's fucking awesome. It's super evil, and it just adds so much character to the album that just goes across the whole record. Let's see. The solos are flawless. They're really, really melodic. I love how the guitar players, they're really well balanced. I think you can tell when one kind of hands it off to another, but it sounds like it could really easily just be the same brilliant guitar player writing all the solos. But they both write excellent riffs, great solos. I love the melodicism. I definitely agree with Marty's point. I think this sounds European and maybe more like, I don't know. I couldn't really pull up any influences that I could really foresee with this band. I think that speaks to how original they are. But there's definitely like a melodicism that they add to a lot of their songs, which I think is a big reason why Don chose to cover them. I think that's just like, we are melodic.
It was a good fit, a really good fit.
Absolutely, yeah. That impressed me a whole lot. Also, just like the layout of the album, I love how there's a couple of like 1 minute little instrumental tunes in there. I wouldn't like call them a whole song, so I'm not going to say they're my least favorite songs, but they're just kind of like little commercials in there. And I love that they give you just kind of like a little bit of a sit down and take a piss or get a beer kind of moment throughout the album. I'll shut up about the musicality.
All right, Jim.
Yeah, great points, guys. I completely agree. Another element that I really want to call out is these guys really paid attention to what riffs they utilized, because even like some of my favorite riffs on this album are what's going on behind the solos, what's being played behind the solos. There are some really awesome, super original tremolo style riffing going on here that like again, I keep like harkening back to Morbid Angel. Like I think that Trey heard these like riffs that like most people are just listening to the leads, but if you listen to those like the rhythm guitar behind those leads, some really interesting tremolo riffs going on there, and unique. And I think it had an influence on Trey, or if not, it's just some kind of really weird spontaneous thing. I know Abominations came out the same year as their first demo, but as Infernal's first demo, but whatever. But what's cool about it is also like there's an interplay between those riffs behind the solos and the solos themselves. It's like they cared about, what kind of riff am I going to play behind this lead? Like how is it going to make sense? Is it going to gel well? And because in each of those, in each and every song, really, when I hear the riff, behind the solo and listen to the solo itself, like they make sense. They're not fighting against one another. And I can tell you that even in my case in a band, like I never cared what the lead was doing. I just wrote it out like, this is the riff I'm going to play behind your lead, dude. Like I didn't care what the guy was going to do. I was like, whatever, I'm going to play this riff. But it really seems to me that they cared, because it just really stood out to me that the riffs behind the leads are not throwaway. They just kind of all fit together in a really, really nice way. But yeah, man, I got to call out some just, total agreement with Kellen, man. I love that bell toll in Night of the Living Dead. It's just so powerful, man. and how they'll do in that song. There's like they're playing a really fast guitar, but the drummer is just going really slow. Like he's playing like a doom beat, but the guitar's like going super fast, and it's just like it creates like this really great tension. And there's all these great moments in every song that have this interplay between like the tempo and the guitars. When they're matched or when they're not, like they create these moments of tension. And then release. And every good metal band does that. But I think the Infernal Majesty, 1987, these guys were masters of that. So it absolutely, you know, permeates every song. This sort of like mastery of tension and release. Yeah, Ben is completely on point. The solos are memorable and melodic. And the bass, man, the bass runs are really great. There's this cool, real, and SOS, which, man, oh come on, Satan our Savior, dude, I love that. That song, man, so awesome. But there's a moment in that song where he's doing like a kind of a triplet bass stomp while the riffs are just kind of doing whatever they want to do on the guitars. But he's like dun 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 dun, and it's just like super powerful. And I was like, man, this is like pure awesome. 80s extreme metal bass playing, and it's not distorted. I mean, you guys know I'm a huge fan of distorted. He doesn't need it, man. He's got a great mid-rangey tone that's super punchy, pushes out anyway. Stands right on top of it. I know I should have saved that comment for the production, but whatever. I think that hit the runs that he does. Like he does some really cool runs on one of the choruses in one of these songs. Which song was that?
Some cool runs towards the end of the album.
Yeah. I think it's behind. Yes, it's Skeletons in the Closet, I think. Anyway, one of those, but one of the later songs. But yeah, just a really cool. Like during the chorus, you look under the vocals, and he's just kind of just doing this thing. Not a Steve DiGiorgio type run, but one that really fills that gap between the guitars and the drums like it should. And
it's kind of like a Testament type of run.
Just like clean and clear, everything you want and nothing you don't. You know what I mean? Just
Greg
just
Christensen,
crisp.
was that his name?
Yeah. So anyway, absolute musicality, composition. These guys were right on. So.
Yeah, I mean, I have very little to add other than that. It's really, you expect a band's debut album. You have your whole life to write your first album, right? The fact that the whole album has an ebb and flow to it. Listen to this. I haven't listened to it in a while, so putting it on and listening to it this week, it's like I anticipated the first half to be stacked and the second half to kind of peter out. That's kind of how that usually works and ends strong, but really doesn't. I mean, side 2 starts off with None Shall Defy, which starts off a bit more mid-pace. I'm like, okay, here we go. It's going to be a down tick. Not the case. It's just a good feel change up here. It just really, the maturity in the songwriting is what really takes me here. The riffs are so, there's not a riff on here that I'm like, oh, that's a throwaway riff, or oh, that's a riff that sounds like this band or that band. Totally. It just, the way it was composed, it's just so smart and dark. I love the melodies, especially in Night of the Living Dead. Just the guitar work, just the subtle melody in that thing. It just really sells the song so well, which I'm going to get back into that song again because that's like my favorite on the album. But nothing impedes on the quality. The vocals are good throughout. He isn't doing anything. He's not really showing a lot of dynamics. He's just in a pocket doing the right thing. He's not singing out of his range. He's not trying to throw falsettos in there. He's just keeping it kind of dark thrash style.
I think he's actually pretty noteworthy for just sounding really more charismatically angry than most other singers at the time. Like he sounds like he's in your face, just trying to get you over to Satan's side. Sorry,
he's getting you right up in there. Close you can smell his Aquanet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've got zero complaints on this record. I was, the more I listen to it, I'm like, okay, there's got to be a lull, a point in this record where it's gonna like, okay, here's my least favorite. It never really comes, and it's like really cool to stumble across an album that's got consistency and quality from start to finish, and their song structures and their composition was always smart, always inventive, without being overblown. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think it's a very expertly written record, and I have not heard a single note of any of their shit since they reunited in '96. I want to say it was '96 they reunited. No, yeah, I think it was '96. It was 11 years between their second album and their first album, but
Yeah.
I'm interested. I'm interested to hear if what they did in the '80s translates to now. But people in the chat are gonna have to tell me what that's like. Someone said one of their albums is really good as well, but I haven't heard it. Anyway, let's talk about the production, Kellen.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, the guitar sound on this record is what sort of evades thrash categorization for me. There's something just a little bit blurred, or it's smoothed over in a way that I think misses some degree of that like crunchiness. But the fact that it's blurred, or that you can't really make out sort of the edges of it at times, I think it ends up being a bit closer at times to like that mid-paced pacing turns it a little bit heavier, and that's where I kind of hear like the death metal side of things. It's just an uglier kind of guitar tone in the sense that you can't sort of group out like what a chord looks like necessarily as cleanly as you would usually be able to. So the guitar sound on this record is unique. And I would agree in the sense that like this has got an atmosphere to it. And that runs throughout the entire record. So in terms of having a darker sound altogether, very much agree with Jim's point about the cleaner bass tone. For me, the time where I hear it the most is on Path of the Psycho, the closing track. There's a riff out there where you can just feel like the muscle of the bass is just pushing his way to sort of a certain point in the mix. It's a clean tone, but it's elevated enough in terms of the sound and clarity and the production that you can make it out. My only complaint on this record is mostly a drum one. I think like snare sounds a little bit thin. I think the upper portion of the drum, like cymbals, ride, stuff like that, don't sound as loud or dynamic as I would like a drum kit. That might be a performative thing. Like that might just be the individual as a drummer, but that's the one aspect of this record that I feel doesn't lack the same sort of like life or unique character that would stand out. But I think probably to the point that's most important about this record is that there is like a general sense of a vibe or a place that this inhabits that doesn't sound like traditional thrash or traditional speed metal. And that sort of darker element to it is where you start to reach into more sort of extreme metal territory.
Great points, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I will say you mentioned Path of the Psycho. I'm going to blow this up for a second. It's spelt wrong on the high roller. And it's on this as well.
They meant to do that.
Really?
I don't know.
Is it that way on you? Is that a high roller issue you got there? Is it screwed up there too?
Yep.
Yeah, it's that way on my record.
It is?
The way it was meant to be.
Is it that way on your record?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it actually was like that. Yeah, it's in that Metal Archives too. So I think it's just the way they did it.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. All
So
right.
you're wrong, Marty.
Whatever. I looked it up on Webster's and it said that word is spelt wrong. Dum dum. Anyway, Jim, production.
Man, I love the guitar sound on this. Like it's just really, really dark and evil. You know, I think about like, you know, Haunting the Chapel. The guitar sound on that EP is just really just like kind of, you know, almost like muffled, you know, but it just sounds evil, you know. But I think these guys have a more concise, like it's a sharper sound than it was on Haunted Chapel. They took this sort of that low mid-range like darkness, but made it like punchier and really more intelligible. So a little bit different opinion than Callan. Like I do feel it's defined, but with like a lot of darkness, you know, pushing it forward, pushing it up. And the drums, like, yeah, man, I love the drum sound. I think it sounds really organic and I kind of feel like it's a room kind of a sound. There's a lot of warmth to it, and because of that warmth, like it really, for me, on a like kind of a EQ spectrum scale, it really like it sits well with where the guitars lie in the mix. Um, and that sort of like low to mid range, both the drums and the guitar occupy, allow that punchy sort of like it's a thinner bass sound, but it allows like the punch of the bass to kind of be ever present, where it's easy to pick out even when they're playing fast and stuff. So I like that sort of decision that they made, where those lower ends of the mix are occupied by guitars and drums, and then like maybe like the high mid is where the bass lives, because it allows it to not get completely consumed by the rest of the instruments, which is typically happens in extreme metal. And but and another thing, the guy's vocal, it's loud on this record. Let's be honest, it's up there,
Yeah,
but he's got a great voice though. Like it doesn't bother
not
me.
offensive. No.
I like where his voice is. I like the levels because it is gritty and just angry and snarling, and and if some of the lyrics, I mean, like okay, let me just preface this. I like the lyrics in Night of the Living Dead. I think they're great. Especially when they're, they will march for Satan, Yeah, it's good stuff, man. Demon guardians of the damned, just reading them off, may sound silly, but he says it with such like, like, I believe this shit. Like, yeah, man, I'm gonna march with fucking armies of the damned too. Let's do this.
Hold
shit.
on, let me get my hairspray, guys. Ready.
Yeah, that's right, dude. What was that? Aquanet.
Aquanet.
Yeah, let's get the Aquanet, man. Let's do this. But yeah, man, I think it's for me it's kind of like an album from '87. This is like for me the perfect sound. I really like it. It's one of the things that the first time I put the record on, the first time I listened to it, I was just like, oh man, this is a sweet spot for me in terms of tone. The tone of the guitars and just the overall tone of the album. That sort of like low mid warmth. That also like allows like the darkness, the vibe, and the atmosphere of the album to come through. I forgot who mentioned in the chat, but saying that there was atmosphere is totally correct, because in thrash, especially in '87, it wasn't really about atmosphere. It was about punching you in the face. It was about getting out there. It had a very much in-your-face punk kind of an attitude. So for this to come along, there's almost like it's sort of thrash, sort of not, sort of proto-death, sort of not. And in the midst of all that, these guys were occupying a very unique space. They weren't trying to just like punch you in and walk away. They wanted to leave you like feeling a sense of unease in the song. And there weren't a lot of bands of this style, or of these styles plural, I should say, that were doing that, or even being successful at the attempts. And these guys did it and were successful. So kudos to them.
Right on. Ben.
You said a whole lot of stuff that I totally agree with. I was thinking it's really hard to like come up with much more than just absolute praise for an album that's like of this caliber. It's hard to like criticize it objectively. It's hard to say what I would change about it at all. And lost my train of thought a little bit, but I do think the drums, I don't mind it, but they do like objectively kind of sound like crap to me. I wouldn't be surprised if they were like sample replaced or something, or maybe, I don't know. They just don't sound real to me. There's like not much cymbals going on there. Not that I really need that. But I think also overall throughout the album, there's a lack of a lot of clarity, kind of like my camera right now.
Put your hand up by it like this and then pull it back. Sometimes it'll reset it. There you go. Now it'll pull it back. There you go.
Touch me now.
I don't know where it is, but
nothing from you for the Samantha Fox reference.
I want to feel your body.
There we go.
So I don't really mind the drums. They just don't sound real. But I think there was a big focus on the band just like getting those riffs. Like we wanted these riffs to be as powerful and impactful as possible, and that worked. I think that works absolutely great. And just having the front man just like right up all over there. It's not a brilliant production by any means, but it doesn't need to be anything smart. It's perfect. They just kind of went in there, banged it out. Not a lot of, room for compromise to be had there. I think must not have been very hard. I was just kind of looking at their history. Like they apparently banged out this demo within 6 months of putting the band together, had a record deal. They already had half of the album written by that point. And then once they recorded the album, Roadrunner was going to put them on a tour. And then I guess one of the members just like canceled the tour, said he couldn't make it or something, and just fucked the whole thing. And then like they got into it with Roadrunner and it didn't work out. And I think really just tanked the whole band. It was just like they had a moment of absolute pure brilliance and it was just dashed away because they couldn't really seize on the moment. But yeah, the production is great. I don't really mind much of anything about it. It's standard for its time. Yeah, the drums are just a little weird, but I don't notice it. It's the kind of thing like I don't notice until I'm doing the album club where I'm like picking out little things to say about it. Like I am tasked with things that I think could be better, but I don't notice those things when I'm just listening as a casual listener. So It's not like, it's not like it matters really at all. That's really all I really had about production. I think it's great. Everything sits where it ought to.
Yep, and I agree with everybody here. The fact that the only thing that really kind of initially was jarring about the mix or the production, Jim says he really likes the bass tone, and I do like it, but I find myself not thinking about it much until like a run comes in, and I don't know if they turn it up or what, it's kind of a plunky bass sound.
Mm.
It's got more mid-range than attack to it, but such a minor complaint. Nothing, the vocals are a bit loud, but I do like his voice. I think he is doing exactly what needs to be done for this music here. I love the guitar tone. It's dark, sinister. The riffing, it's not too deep. It's not too shrill. It really highlights the riffing really well. I think everything on here sounds, I have zero complaints, honestly. We could nitpick. It's pointless. It's really good. Let's talk about the least favorite songs. Kellen.
Okay, so as much as Overlord's great, when I hear like that instrumental RIP that leads into, that whole 8.5 minute swing, it's so interesting where they place it on the album.
It's weird, but
because it's like you get, okay, we're a speed metal, thrash band, and then it just feels like the world opens up, and I didn't know it. And if you had told me that they were the same song, I totally would have believed you, because it just feels like the perfect sort of instrumental lead in to this amazing track. That on the Night of the Living Dead, that that is like, it is just so perfect. And I keep on listening to that lick as how they sort of divide up the verses. And I'm like trying to place that as like, what kind of a lick is this? And it's like, is that
it's like a lead harmony. It's a lead harmony type
right,
of thing.
right.
Yeah.
But like in terms of one, you would assign genre definition, right? Like you would have subscribed to a certain area, and it's like it's totally unique. I have a difficult time placing it, but it is like this crazy little sinister thing that just noodles its way into my head.
Yeah.
And every single time I think about that song, I would think about that little harmony that's coming up, and
that's kind of their signature. Like they have a lot of riffs that are like climbing up the scale, back
right.
down. Real,
right, and then they go into this like lurching sort of like kind of thing. So, yeah, and I already brought up the bell that leads in, and there's the scream, and then you get into the solos. And like that 8.5 minute swing is some of the best metal that I, just collectively, that it was just one moment. Anyway, so I love that track. Moving into SOS, every time that song begins, that's the one that I think because it's sort of mid-paced, and the way that their sort of chords crawl on that album to start, or that track to begin with, that's like the first thing I think is like, this sounds more like a death metal track, than it does a speed metal track. And it picks up into something, but just the way that begins and sort of develops like this sense of body to it, it totally reminds me of a death metal song. Other ones that I guess want to briefly mention, Skeletons in the Closet. That's like Infernal Majesty, and that's the most explicit Slayer track for me on this record.
Yeah.
There's sort of a key few moments when the double bass kicks in. I'm like, that is 100% American thrash coming from Slayer. Yeah. But last one I'll bring up here. Yeah, I think I mentioned early the same sort of moment. While SOS begins with sort of that death metal riffing, Path of the Psycho to end the album, even though I guess we get like a little bit of an instrumental closer. I guess something in the Anthology of Death. So the Anthology of Death that leads into Path of the Psycho, that sort of closing swing, there's a moment there where it goes really mid-paced. And that's another one of those death metal tracks or death metal moments on this record. So there's nothing bad here. More than anything, like how much I hope left. I don't know if it was a collective of all their best stuff and they left tons on the floor afterwards, but this feels like a super brief record. There aren't tons of tracks. And so every single moment I feel is like optimized. There's it kind of goes by quickly.
There's a 2-track demo that came out in '88, and some of the versions of this, it's their bonus tracks, and those 2 tracks are also awesome. They fit right on their album.
Huh.
Yeah. Anyway, but those are my favorite. No, nothing bad here at all. I can't even point to like an instrumental shortcoming because the instrumentals are like one of my biggest favorite like lead ups in all of this, and then it closes. It just, I don't know, just leave it alone. Nothing bad here at all. Nothing to complain about. All good.
Yeah, the Path of the Psycho. I'm like, oh, here it is. This is the one that's going to be but it's like so short. It's like it's just a stupid outro. It's like, that's not even worth complaining about. It's fine. It's fine. Okay.
Well, it was hard to pick a least favorite. I'll just get right out there. I think SOS is maybe my least favorite because it has fast parts and some slow parts, and they just kind of don't feel like they ought to fit in the same song together. It's trying too disparate of things to try and make them work. And then when they try and switch between the slow and the fast stuff, it just doesn't work as clever as the rest of the album does. So that was why I chose that as my least favorite, but it's still killer. A couple of gripes are that I think the title track is a little long. I think Anthology of Death is a little long. But favorite track, easily, Night of the Living Dead. I think Night of the Living Dead is one of the top 20 heavy metal thrash songs of the 80s, bar none. I like it more than anything Fate did. I like it more than anything King Diamond ever did. That is an anthem that just cannot be fucked with. Great fucking song.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
And like perfect choice to like start the album off with Overlord and then get even better with that song.
Yeah.
Killer move. Wasn't hard to pick my favorite. And yeah, that's the song that got me into this album back in 1996. Fuck.
Yep. All right, Jim.
Hell yeah, Ben. Night of the Living Dead is an absolute crusher. I think we're all in agreement there. I mean, that song is just amazing. I have the exact same opinion. Like I love Overlord. I think it's great. And then you get R.I.P. This, the electroacoustic guitar thing, and then behind it there's like distorted guitars kind of fading in. It really does, even though it's a separate song, separate instrumental, like it really does feel like a build up for Night of the Living Dead. And then when Night of the Living Dead comes, it just kills, man. There's so many great things about it. I already referenced all the bell and the lyrics, and the fast tremolo riff playing off the slow drums. I mean, there's just so much energy and power in that song. It's an absolute banger, 100%. I really like the None Shall Defy. I like the kind of syncopation between the drums and the guitars on the riff, on the verses. And there's a little bit after the chorus. There's like a little bit of an odd time riff going on here. Odd time. It's not anything like super complicated, but it's not 4/4 and anything like that. It always kind of stands out to me. Like a great balance between like just a little bit weird enough to make it unique without it, being like fucking Origin or something like that. You know what I mean? I like when it's a little bit of balance of leaning into that technicality, showing what we can do, but not like putting that in there to sacrifice the integrity of the song. And then and also, man, in None Shall Defy, it's about 6 minutes in, near the end of the song, man. There's just majestic where just it just makes you want to stand up, power riff. And then as it fades out, there's like this note bass kind of a scale thing. It just kind of eerie, like it just fades out like that, and just it's so dark, so evil, just takes you right down the abyss. I mean, that's heavy metal, and like that line, "Lead us into hell," that's exactly what it's doing. The music perfectly embodies that. Yeah, so it's really that sort of like early middle section of the record that I love the best. I actually do love Satan Our Savior. I think that's where I hear a lot of those Trey-isms there, especially like about 2.5 minutes in. I was like, I actually wrote in my notes, I was like, he is absolutely influenced by them. I mean, that riff there, I mean, Trey's listens to Infernal Majesty and listens to Satan Our Savior. Another badass, as the riff fades out, it's a death metal riff that fades out there, man. It is fast and evil and dark. I mean, you could see like where death metal was starting to rear its ugly head in bands like this, and riffs like this, and these bands were providing to listeners. And that's also the one that has that cool, kind of like slow triplet bass stomp in there that I really, really dig. So yeah, the only thing my only gripe with the record is, first of all, let me preface this: Path of the Psycho. It's an awesome bass solo. The cool. It's just like little bass line running over it and all that kind of stuff. But I would have preferred the album end on like a super powerful fast song. I kind of like wish that Path of the Psycho and Anthology of Death were inverted, where Anthology of Death was the closer.
Yeah.
I think that would have we would have ended the album on a song that had a cool bass break about 1:30 in, and it's just a lot of head banging awesomeness. Need I say more? I mean, that's what that song is to me. But and in terms of like the performance though on Path to the Psycho, even though it's my least favorite thing, I mean, I'll listen to it for the bass playing because it's really intriguing. Kind of like chord based, like picking and and you gotta like how the guys whisper. What does he whisper? Satan lead us into hell there, and the chorus vocals are a little goofy, but I just like when I listen to Path of the Psycho, I think of the cover. I'm like, did the cover influence Path of the Psycho, or the Path of the Psycho influence?
I mean, if this is Satan in this context, I go see this guy. He's cute.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Looks like party time at Chuck E. Cheese or something.
It's a killer restaurant, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it.
If these lyrics were like brilliant and not cheesy, there would be like a lack of synergy. Like the album cover being cheesy, the visuals of it all, it's got a lot of cheesiness to it. It's like a movie that you want to, a horror movie that you watch with your buddies, kind of thing.
Exactly, man. It's Evil Dead 2, which happens to be my favorite horror.
Dead on, man.
All right, everybody go except for me, right?
Yep.
All righty then. 100% agree. The Overlord, Night of the Living Dead is like the 1-2 punch, but let's start a little more in depth, I guess. Overlord, speed metal intent. The first couple riffs out of the gate, it sounds like speed metal to me. Aggressive yet anchored to interesting song structure and melody, and that's what you're going to get for this entire record. You get the little brief instrumental, and then Night of the Living Dead. Again, Dawn immortalized this one on their mini CD in 1996. Epic track, evil melodies, mature songwriting. It's just where that song goes. You just don't know. It's kind of like you're on this journey. It's not like it's such a weird transition into, avant-garde. It's just such an interesting song that just kind of carries along with the tide. It's great. It's a great song. End of side A is SOS. Love the speed and sharp riffing. Towards the end, it feels very frantic and urgent. Another great thing. And I'm thinking, okay, side 2, it's going to be a little bit more subdued, which None Shall Defy starts off kind of a mid pace. I'm like, okay, here it is. But excellent use of tempo and dynamics. Interesting and well structured song. I really love the powerful and unique riff work. 100%. Skeletons in the Closet follows that up. Savage, speed, tremolo, dominant pick riffing. Kind of a Slayer vibe to it, for sure. Great track. And just when you think they might start to run out of gas and take it down a notch, they don't. They pick it back up again. Theology of Death, really well done. Path of the Psycho. Maybe it was the bass player that tried to spell that. Anyway. I kid. I have zero on here that I think is inferior. I could not pick a track on here. I'm like, oh, it was all. I mean, is it all track 1 and track 3? No, but it's so damn consistent and close. I mean, every song can't be Night of the Living Dead. They can't all be masterpieces, but they're damn close. It's a great record. Judgment, final thoughts. I think we know where we stand on this one. Kellen.
Yeah, I think we knew that it was going to be an amazing record. I think going into this week, yeah, and I am still committed to this idea. It is an awesome record. I probably the one thing that was different about it is I still do think it has a very unique personality.
Oh yeah,
and maybe that's trying to delve deeper into that. This past week was sort of the greater discovery for me, is just how a record like this, just a one-off, can seem like sort of a piece that connects, speed metal of the early 80s and sort of giving way to what's about to happen with extreme metal and death metal at this point in the 1980s. So it's sort of like a tenuously connects, all those sort of genres there. And it was, yeah. If you have not heard this, get on it for sure. And don't be afraid of the album cover. Pick it up.
I'm sorry, Phil. I just watched a 2024 Sabbath live set here, a couple tracks, and I don't think that band's for me, to be honest with you. Jim, you're up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obvious where I stand. My pick, I'm sure you can tell by everything I said tonight. I really love this, and I like, Ben's comment in the chat. He's like, if they come out with an album right after this, it could have been, a great, companion with Altars of Madness, and, been right up there with it. And I think it could have been. I think if they had stayed the course somehow, where they were going with this, I think would have really kind of upended, things, and they may have just fully crossed over into death metal, and no telling what would have happened. So, but regardless, what they left behind is an epic must-have of a metal album, just an absolute crusher. And and it's okay if you're going to have a one and done. I mean, I know they had subsequent albums, but in the 80s, this was their one and done. Yeah. And for an 80s album one and done, I mean, it doesn't get any better. This is
perfect statement. Yeah.
This is like a 9.5 out of 10 all day, and it would have been a 10 if it had a good cover. I could take the Aquanet, just not the Goblin King.
All right. Ben.
Oh, I think we said something about we were going to name the guy. I did some looking into it, the guy on the cover. I did some looking into it, and some stupid Canadian TV show held a contest for naming the guy, and some jerk named it Daedalus. So, yeah, that answers that. Final thoughts. It's near perfect. It's cheesy in just the ways that I want it to be. I don't feel like Slayer was this cheesy, and I just kind of like things like this to be a little more goofy and unserious. That just draws me in a little bit more. I think earlier when we were talking about the image question. I like to be a guy that can like present an album to my friends that you may have passed over because it had a stupid cover on it or something. I'm always wanting to look for stuff that looks dumb but actually is good. So when the potential for the album cover to be completely ridiculous is met with an album that actually is that awesome, there's nothing better than that. So I'm not even taking anything away from this album for the cover. There's just a couple of clumsy parts in it that I think are like objectively kind of sloppy and not great. But like I said, I don't care as a listener. I bang my head to this thing all the way through. It's 9.5 out of 10 for me all day. I wish there was some great live footage of them or some interviews. There's really not a lot of video stuff up there that I could find.
All right.
Check it out. None of this is opinion today. This is all facts.
All facts, everyone. All facts.
100%. All fact all the time. It's a 9.5 album for me too. I think this record, 1987 this came out, and I think Kellen's completely right. There's some definite proto-death stuff happening here. I try to put my, think about the time and the era, what was going on. Was it intentional? I don't know. I think this is just what came out. I think they were going for a dark, aggressive speed or thrash metal record, and this is just kind of how it came out. There wasn't a whole hell of a lot of death metal stuff coming out this time. It's just starting to get going. So, yeah, it's out there. There could have been an influence, but man, they nailed it. They nailed it. And I think it's a shame that more people don't talk about this record. And it's been great listening to it this week. I've owned it, and I'm like, why haven't I listened to this more? It's just one of those things that hits the rack and it's just gone for a while. But yeah, great pick, Jim, as always. Another great one. And no complaints. Great record for sure. And I am picking for next week. So.
Oh no. Twilight Force, here it comes.
There it comes. No, I went through my list and there's so much thrash on here. I'm like, I'm not doing another thrash. We're going to have to mix it up a bit. So
yeah,
my buddy S. Craig Zoller, he was here a while ago and we were hanging out, and he told me about this record and he bought it for me. He said, if you like the first Lost Horizon album, this is the closest band he could find that fits close with it. So we are next week going to be defying the rules with Hybria from South America. I think they're from Brazil.
Yep.
This album rules. It's a stupid cover.
I was going to say, speaking of album covers.
Yeah, speaking of shitty album covers, but man, this album, great musicianship. It's really kind of technical power metal. It's got a lot of energy, and you got the triumphant biker that's winning the day here with his lead pipe.
A biker with a lead pipe and a sword?
Yeah.
Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah. He's
Well,
got
get on a motorcycle and be like, I'm going to hit you with my stick.
But this is a good record. I have not pursued any of their other albums. Craig told me they kind of didn't get as good as they went on, so this was a one and done for me. But this album is really, really good. I figured it'd be a good discussion. I could have picked Sabaton. They're on my list, but I figured let's keep it a little more.
You're not kicking me out this soon.
Underground and tasteful. Yeah. But
I think Marty's trying to run us all off the channel.
we got to have discussion. We can't like it all the time. We just can't.
Well, you didn't like Sabat, so I'm not going to like this.
Nah. You might. It's good shit.
You told me about this maybe a year or two ago, and I kept it on my phone a little bit, and I've played a track or two, and I was like, this is good, but I haven't been in the mood for something like this for a long time. So,
well, guess what, biatch, you're getting in the mood now.
Well, I do like Lost Horizon, so if it is like Lost Horizon, truly, then there's hope.
It's a similar strain of duck for sure. Yeah. So
if Road Rash had a power metal soundtrack, that's right on.
Defying the Rules is the name of the Hybria album. Hybria, whatever. So yeah,
10-year-olds made an album cover title.
Oh my God! I mean, he showed me the album cover. I'm like, dude, there's no way this is gonna be good. But
they hired the guy who did Infernal Majesty's cover. They were like, dude, Goblin King is awesome, man. Let's call him up. We need a dude on a motorcycle and a lead pipe. He can do it.
Right. Oh, come on, Phil. It's going to be good. Y'all going to like it. Do your homework and coming back and tell me that it sucks. Anyway, that's it. Show notes. Kingsley Fowley from Deceased will be on Friday night. We'll be discussing the new Deceased album, and we'll be discussing our favorite albums from each year of the 80s. So that'll be a fun discussion. Always good to get King back and talk about a really good album that they're getting ready to put out here in another month or so. Another Deceased classic coming your way. And I've got reviews. Kellen's got a review. Sue's got a review. Alan's got 2 reviews. I got a review I need to shoot. Lots of stuff, lots of content coming for you on Heavy Metallurgy. In the meantime, check out Killing for Company, link in the description. Check out Brainsmasher, link in the description. Check out Eihwaz Recordings. Buy yourself some tapes, some cheap tapes. Good stuff. And
Cheap.
I'll see you Friday. Y'all have a good one. These guys will be back next week. So cheers. Y'all have a great, great, great week. Take care.